So finally going to do a video on my position on The Voice. At this point in time, I think I'm voting no, and these are the reasons for it. Well, this is the big reasons for it. There are other good opinions on there. Greg Sheridan's article in The Australian from like a year ago, Malcolm Turnbull's initial position on it when he was Prime Minister, I thought was good as well. But this is the thing that I think that isn't being said out there in the world. And the entire opinion is predicated on this opening statement that Parliament is full of arseholes, sneaky arseholes. They're more activists than they are academics, and they're more thespians than they are philosophers. I'm sure some people wanted to enter Parliament correctly, but those that get there because they can maintain an image that the public wants to see, or they can denigrate their opposition's image. They can promote issues to the front that might not necessarily be important issues, but issues to the front that they can deal with. And they can get rid of issues that they have no idea what to do, but may well be really important issues, or try and get them off the front page of the paper. They create distractions and they manipulate. And that's who actually makes it to power. And that's who will be dealing with this. And you must think about this issue in that context. I worry that the Voice of Parliament will just become another tool to contrive, to manipulate, to distract. I think it will use serious issues of racism and colonialism to apply pressure to one side of Parliament or the other. And I think that it will ultimately come under the influence of those who want social justice, Marxist agendas to abound, or mining rights to be given to mining companies. And that's my position. I'm probably going to vote no because of it. Now, why did this all come around? Well, we wanted to empower the Indigenous population, have equality, reach parity. I don't understand how you have two totally different cultures that achieve parity, but okay, it's something like that. All right, so give them billions of dollars of cash. Did it? Didn't work. All right, so we got to pass laws. All right, tell us which laws to pass. Give us some regulatory bodies, or some advisory bodies that teach politicians, okay, well, apparently the politicians don't listen, or apparently the issues are too esoteric to have some sort of government funding thing that exists to tell politicians what to do in the right situation. So you got to have like grassroots movements. So this is what it's about. You're going to have lots of little local communities passing the message upwards, or maybe just contacting the politician directly and telling them how to pass laws. I immediately got an issue here is how someone has two bosses. I thought senators were supposed to represent a state. I thought members of Parliament were supposed to represent their electorate. But then some dude from Tennant Creek or some lady from Rowan picks up the phone and tells you what to do. You've got two bosses there, so I've got an issue there immediately. So we've had regulatory bodies, but they don't work. A Google coalition of peaks, if you want an example of one. So what we're talking about now is that what the yes vote would say is we're going to enshrine this in the Constitution. I think the no vote would say that we're going to entrench this in the Constitution so it can never be changed without a referendum, which rarely happens. So that means every minister or member of Parliament or whatever, for them forever, for the next 1,000 years, is going to have to take a call from a member of The Voice on any issue that they deem it pertinent. Now, I can hear my ancestors, my Western libertarian ancestors saying, hey, checks and balances on the misuse of power, or checks and balances on authority to stop the misuse of power. And I happen to believe that's a pretty good idea. So let's take a look at this, how bad this could get, and let's see how this could be used against us. I know the yes argument makes a point of how this is allegedly going to fix things, where we haven't been able to fix things for 60 years, but suddenly this is just going to work a miracle somehow. Okay, maybe it will. That's a little cynical of me. I'll walk that back. But look, there are many hundreds, perhaps thousands of local Indigenous communities, and my experience with them is not insignificant. I've met many, and I've been on the board, well, not been on the boards, but I've sat in the boardroom with many of them as they've made their decisions. And this is my personal opinion. What do you say? There's usually one, as there is with many organizations, but there's usually one powerful person that controls the room, and they're often kleptocracies. There's a family that has a lot to say, and many of the members don't have much experience or education around corporate governance practices, that you might say. The way that the rest of the board manages to keep the chair under control or something like that. I think it's exactly the sort of organization that you might say a political cadre might be able to influence, might be able to infiltrate and influence, if not control, for their own will. Now, of course, why would you infiltrate a local Indigenous community? What do they have? Well, previously, they had nothing. They had hardly any money, hardly any power. Now they've got direct access to ultimate authority in this country. They've got the ability to hypothetically pick up the phone and call the Prime Minister, which I don't have, you don't have, they will have now. Now, right now with a local Indigenous community, I don't know a problem with that. They should pick up the phone and they should call the Prime Minister and say, look, things are shit out here. This is what we need. I don't know why you sent us what you sent us last time. We didn't need that. What we need is this. That seems a good idea. I promise you, 5 years after this thing kicks off, the people in charge of those communities are going to be the sort of corrupt political cadres that either work for a mining company or are some dipshit green-haired social justice activist with 1/16th Aboriginal heritage who wants to usher in a new age of Marxism, and they can't do it in Sydney or Perth or Melbourne protesting every day. But if you can get in charge of one of these things and you can directly get to the Prime Minister, well, that's quite a bit of power. When all of these things fall to whether or not it's mining interests or social justice activist interests or anyone else, maybe Christian influence or something else, then you will have the ability to put pressure on Parliament and change the way laws are made. And that is, of course, always and forever what everyone's always wanted to do, whether you're influencing the Pope or the King or the Mufti or the Ayatollah or friggin' Parliament in Australia. All powerful people have always wanted to do that. And there's a lot of money in mining in Australia, and there's a lot of social justice dickheads coming out of university. I'd argue that empowering smaller communities that have never had anything but now can influence ultimate power is the worst thing that you can do for them. Remember the map of America during the American election. There's some punter on CNN or Fox who just knows that California is going to vote Democrat because they're bought and paid for, or because all the right policies have been said, or because polling's been done. They know how New Hampshire's going to fall. They know how Arizona's going to fall. These politicians are going to be saying the same thing about those 35 local Indigenous communities that make up the rural area. They're going to say, we've pork barreled over there in Roebourne, we've pork barreled over there in Tennant Creek, we've got our guy on the party in Alice Springs. Okay, we can be guaranteed the voice of support. Now we'll start making policy, rather than the other way around. That is to say, you make policy and then the voice reviews it. The voice will be bought and paid for. It's nothing against Aborigines. White people are more as bought and paid for as anyone that's ever lived, but the Indigenous community is not immune to corruption themselves. It will happen here too. I don't just think, however, that it's going to be the communities that get corrupted. I think government's going to get corrupted by the communities. I think it will work both ways. How? Well, presumably at some point in time, there's going to be a minister or an MP or a senator or something that picks up the phone, ahoy hoy, and there's going to be the voice, whatever it is on the other end, that's going to be saying, I can disagree with this, or I can agree with this, or I want you to change this, or I don't think it's right. Or he's going to put some pressure on a parliamentarian to take advice on what to do. How does that politician say, pipe down, go away, this isn't your jurisdiction, I won't listen to you on this? How will they ever do that without words like racist or whatever, bigot being used? I think they'll always have to listen on all things. And whilst Linda Burney, is currently saying, oh, we won't do things like the flag and Australia Day, you wait until Lydia Thorpe becomes part of The Voice, or whoever comes after Linda Burney. Of course, those things are big ticket items. Those things are front page of the paper sort of stuff. Whatever the real issues are, drugs and alcohol or abuse or something, no one wants that on the front page of the paper. Changing Australia Day, man, that stuff moves like shit off a shovel. Of course, that's going to be front page of the paper stuff. Of course, that's going to come into consideration here. But how does the non-Indigenous politicians say, basically, fuck off, you have no jurisdiction here, go away? You can't. As soon as you do that, you'll be called a racist. It won't be the reasonable voice of The Voice that comes into control of this. It will be the Lydia Thorpe types that can twist the knife on social justice issues and really find a politician's pressure point, some weakness in his or her background that they don't want exposed, put pressure on that and get the big ticket items like Australia Day, the national anthem, the flag, which is going to get the groundswell, which will get the activists on board. And the coalition of minorities, you'll have the goddamn Trotskyists and the Marxists and the feminists and the rainbow crowd, everyone joining together to march on changing Australia Day. Maybe because they give a shit about the Indigenous organisations, but maybe just because they want to practice critical theory and oppose traditional theory and usher in a new age of socialist utopia. This is going to be a good jumping off issue on this. Now, previously, the Indigenous communities haven't had much to do with the coalition of minorities per se, but that's because no one's really wanted to control them because they've never had any real power. You're giving them power now. They're going to be controlled. Why? Because they have power now. I understand the frustrations of an MP who's been working on a bill for 2 years and is just about to drop it into Parliament and say, please consider this, only to take a phone call from a representative of The Voice saying, oh, we need to review this, give us 6 weeks to take a look, and then you miss your chance to get the bill into Parliament before the next election. Or you've made assurances to thousands of vested interests anyway that you'll get it done before Christmas, but you don't because The Voice steps in. So, okay, The Voice should be intervening or at least part of the process early on. But how do you know which bill is supposed to be in the jurisdiction of The Voice or not? As I understand, It's up for the voice to work out whether or not they want to have a say in this. And they don't know what they want to have a say in until the bill's done. So they're always going to come in at the end. They're always going to be this sort of nagging, delaying, whinging voice at the end that stops things from happening. That's just going to play out badly for the Indigenous population. They're taking a weak strategy that's always going to cast them in a negative light. It's not being part of the solution. It's like being an auditor or a policeman or someone at the end who has a complaining about what's being done by the people that do it. That's going to look bad. We already pork barrel in certain states. When the Liberal Party decides they really need to win Western Australia, all of a sudden Western Australia gets tons of money. Same thing happens in all states. The same thing will happen with these 35 local Indigenous communities. If presently they're making waves, that means that you can't get some mining rights through. Trust me, money will flow and these guys will get bought off and suddenly the mining rights will get through. And that means that the sorts of people that take money will come into power in those Indigenous organisations, and those aren't the sort of people that are necessarily going to do good on the ground. Those are the sorts of people that are going to know how to twist the knife so they get the most amount of money and how to take it and get away with it. They're the sorts of sharks that swim through the swamp in Canberra. It's not, all we're going to end up doing is corrupting the communities that might do benefit for the local communities. And we're going to stack them with the sorts of people that are going to interfere in Parliament and delay our bills and delay our acts and influence our politicians in a way that we, the Australian people, don't want. Look, I could go on for a while on this, but that's ultimately my position. I hope you take my point. Don't hit like, don't hit subscribe, or do hit like, do hit subscribe, do comment. I don't really care. I just want to get my opinion out there. But anyway, thank you for listening, because I accept that you have taken your time to listen. Vote however you want, and who knows, I might change my opinion at some point in time after I've listened to other people's points of view. Thanks very much, guys. Bye.